Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Veerman, recording remotely from my place in Toronto. We have on the line my friend and trusty producer, Max Kerman, also on the line from Hamilton, Shane Cunningham, our pop culture aficionado, and on another line, intern Erica working the dials. Guys, this is a first ever for our podcast. This is a first ever for the world. We are recording from 4 remote locations. I don't know how this pod's going to sort of flow. I don't know how it's going to go, but here we are. It's nice to talk to you guys. Haven't seen you in a bit.
Yeah.
I know. I'm very excited we're doing this. A lot has changed since the last time we podded, but I will say, I think the one question on everybody's mind as we're going through this thing together is, how will this affect our fitness challenge? Like, do you think we're going to gain weight, or do you think we're going to lose weight? Because, I'm not going to the bar, so I'm, not drinking any beer or getting any drunk food. That might happen once a week. But there's also more time for snacking at home because, we've made
way
some runs.
more time. And I've already won the fitness challenge, though, right? The fitness challenge was over, I thought. And I had won that.
Okay.
Because everyone else did.
That is true. Oh, I guess, yeah.
But as far as our fitness, I'll just speak for myself, it is gone to shit because all the non-perishable items are not meat. And meat was the thing that was really keeping my calorie count low. So I'm eating, I rationed a bunch of chocolate bars, and I was only supposed to eat one maybe every 2 days, but I'm eating 2 every day. And it's going, it's
what
going
kind of
terribly.
chocolate bars, Shane?
I'm really obsessed with the Reese's Outrageous right now, and Reese Peanut Butter Cups.
What's that?
A Reese Outrageous is kind of like an O. Henry bar, but instead of filled with nuts, it's filled with Reese's Pieces, and it has caramel inside it also. It's amazing.
Oh, wow. That sounds very good.
Yeah. What about you, Max? You think you're going to gain or lose?
I feel like I'm going to lose weight, but we'll see. I don't know. I feel
like you don't even drink that much alcohol, though, when you go out. I feel like you're very good at just keeping it to 1 or 2 drinks, and you usually get a vodka soda.
Yeah. There is. I'm eating in more now, right? So
yeah,
I feel like the portion sizes are a little bit smaller, which is probably a good sign. Also, I've been walking the rail trail here in Hamilton and doing the stairs. We've been doing this YouTube home video fitness stuff, like Selena Gomez and stuff like that. So that's been happening.
Oh, nice.
Around the house. Yeah. So I'll be looking just like Selena when this thing is all said and done.
Man, I can't wait to see you.
Toned butt and toned abs. So it's great. By the way, Manager Ash is listening to this. Just because she's on the line, but she doesn't have a microphone, but she's sort of in on the pod to make sure we don't say anything stupid. And she just texted me. She said, haha, you bought that Reese. So apparently, Shane, I have already eaten the Reese Outrageous, and I probably loved it. Ash, can you confirm if I liked it? Can you text me that, Ash, while we're recording now? Okay, thank you. Oh, there she is. Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
She said, yes, I do love that chocolate bar. Anyway.
What do you think, Mike? You're going to gain or lose?
Oh, man, definitely gain, just because this, it's funny, we're hunkered down in the apartment, and the apartment feels a lot smaller than it did before the lockdown, before we sort of went into hibernation. But I'm definitely going to gain. Danica got some goodies, some good stuff. We have lots of good, healthy stuff, but there's also lots of Fruit Loop action going on. So yeah, I'm going to gain. There's not really much to do around here because we're pretty much shut in, man. I mean, how's everybody dealing with the isolation? Erica, how have you sort of been dealing with everything?
Oh, well, no one really knows if we have a job or not, pending what the pro sports leagues decide to do with their seasons, which I know seems a little bit silly to be concerning yourself with whether or not basketball or soccer is coming back. But yeah, it's a big bummer because probably I think over half of my department at MLSE are freelance employees. And unfortunately, in the case of a global pandemic, there's no job security. So we're all sort of just waiting around, holding our breath, hoping that, after these, whatever the CDC, they keep updating their recommended time limit for big group gatherings. So I think right now it's at 8 weeks. So we're thinking best case scenario would be sports start back mid to late May. But I mean, who really knows,
As a piece of advice, Erica, if you're smart, you're going to encourage us to do so many remote podcasts, and you can produce them from home, and then you can invoice accordingly. So that's what you would do if you were smart.
Let's do it.
So I'd encourage you to do that.
Yeah.
But it's up to you. You got to be like, guys, are we podding today? Are we podding today?
Yeah.
And then we pay you.
Let's do it. If you guys are bored, let's do it. Also, I'm trying to learn guitar, Max. I tried to learn your tutorial today, but it's not for beginners. It's for very intermediate people. So I had to log off pretty quick.
To be honest, I can't do the guitar tutorials on our Cal's Instagram has been very, very fun. But if someone is just starting out, it would be painful for everybody else to watch. So it is, you're right, for intermediate people.
Yes.
But you know how to play guitar for real, Max?
Do I know how to play guitar for real?
Yeah, like you can actually play it competently?
Of course I can.
Oh, I thought the big joke was like you fake play.
No, I know. Come on. Are you kidding me? I've even recorded some guitar parts on Arkel's albums. The joke is I just don't like playing guitar. I'd prefer to frolic around on the stage. So that is where that rumor comes from. But I can totally play guitar.
Are you the second best guitar player in your band?
No, third best. Tony's is definitely the second best. I'd say Mike's the best. Tony's number 2. I'm number 3. Yeah, for sure.
What about Nick?
Nick's not that good, and Tim can kind of get it. Nick and Tim are probably equally bad, but they can like play some, they can do like oh where can my baby be, like that kind of shit. Yeah, but let's get into the heart of the matter here, Mike. Where do we begin?
Well, my God, yeah. Where do we begin? I feel like we are in unprecedented times. The world is irreparably altered. Nobody knows anything. I feel like people's anxiety levels are very high, and I think it's justified, mostly because people, there's a certain amount of like we put stock in our confidence in certainty and sort of an ability to predict what's going to happen. And it feels like we can't do that right now. Erica said that her and everybody that's doing freelance are concerned about their jobs. I think everybody's concerned about the economy and the jobs and where this is going to go. And then also, like, on the most sort of maybe important and fundamental level, our health and what could happen if we were to contract COVID-19, if we know somebody, and most likely we're all going to eventually know somebody. So it's kind of, the world is in a very precarious place. I mean, shit, the 4 of us are in 4 different spots recording this podcast, or in 5 different spots with Manager Ash on the line as well. What are your guys' vibe? How are you guys feeling right now? Is it high anxiety? Do you feel good about this lockdown? Shane, why don't we start with you?
For me, I'm very low anxiety. I really do, in a weird way, and it's very odd to say, but I enjoy the isolation right now. I'm enjoying the family time. I'm really getting to know my daughter a lot better, and vice versa. And I feel like she's obsessed with me for this time period. She doesn't really know what's going on. She doesn't know why I'm around so long, but we're having a really great time. And there's a lot of laughter in the house, and there's a lot of snacking and video games and reading and, just everything I'd always want in life. Like I haven't been at work or doing much work beyond today. I was working from home, but it is a very relaxing way to live for me, in a way I'd prefer to live all the time. If it wasn't for the virus, this would be great.
Maxie, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I really have a busy schedule typically, and I really thrive on jamming about 14 different things into a day, and going to see friend to friend, and then coming home, and usually I'm thinking about the pod and thinking about the band and thinking about shows and thinking about other people's projects, and I really love that. And this has forced me to slow down a little bit. Because obviously I'm not going to a bunch of lunches and coffee dates all day long like I normally do. That said, though, I'm finding that I can still be pretty productive. Lots of good conversations over the phone, texting lots of my pals. And yeah, I'm trying my best to find the silver lining in all this. And, we can get into sort of like the grander, like societal repercussions to what's happening with this virus. But I'd say for me, I'm pretty optimistic in that, like, if everybody just does their thing and kind of keeps a cool head over the next few weeks, we'll be able to get back to the fun. So that's basically been my MO. I'm like, will everybody just keep their shit together for the next, like, whatever, 3 weeks, month and a half, however long it takes, so we can get back to the good time? Because I think we're all in agreement. When this thing ends, we're going on the bender of a lifetime, right, guys? Is that?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's like the question is, when does it end? And like, is that a conservative guess? 3 weeks, a month, whatever. And are people going to get back together in bars again? I mean, obviously, we've been seeing, the minute that social distancing sort of, I feel like the world blew up last Wednesday, like whatever it is, 5-6 days ago now, and people's opinions sort of changed immediately about how they were going to approach this thing. And of course, that night I'm talking about is the night that, like, within the span of about 25 minutes, it was announced that Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson tested positive for COVID-19. Donald Trump had, like, suspended air travel in, like, an address to the nation. And then the NBA had sort of canceled a game right before tip-off. And then it was reported that Rudy Gobert had tested positive for COVID-19 as well. And so within this, and then literally like 2 minutes after that, the NBA suspended the season. They were the first sort of major sports league to suspend their season until further notice. So it was like kind of like everything went from very low risk and kind of people being like, oh yeah, like they're going to try and play some NBA games without people in arenas. We're all still going to get together, and it's low risk, but like, let's keep an eye on things, to all of a sudden people being like, holy shit, like this is real. Let's get our act together. And I don't know about you guys, but basically I feel like the minute that all went down on Wednesday, it was like, this is for real. Like, no more messing around. And the reason I bring that up is because we all saw this past weekend, like there were like students in, Boston or New York or whatever, like out celebrating St. Patrick's Day like it was no thing. So to your point, Max, about everybody getting back together, I do wonder when people will get back together sort of confidently and responsibly. But then I start thinking about those kids that were all out sort of like trying to get their last party in before they all, whatever, shut everything down. And I'm like, I guess people will just kind of go back to doing what they were doing and take their chances. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think we're all just waiting on the government to tell us when we can go outside again. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like at least that's what I'm waiting for. Is like, can some official source give us the thumbs up when it's time? Sorry, Shane, what did you say?
Well, I was just going to say, when the numbers kind of stop doubling and people, everyone who has it, corona or COVID-19 as it's now being referred to, is identified. The problem is right now more people have it than it seems, because a lot of people haven't been tested. So when there's a little bit of ubiquity to the tests and everyone either knows if they have it or they don't, I think we'll feel a lot more comfortable being out and about.
But, I think, Shane, did you hear about our Wednesday night? And has Mike talked to you about that yet?
Yeah, I have heard about it. Yeah, that's insane. I found it very interesting, and like it seemed like straight out of a movie. It didn't seem real.
Erica, did you hear about our Wednesday night?
I have not. Please inform.
I just want a fresh pair of ears to tell the story, because it's quite an interesting story, and it's frankly like a night I will never forget. It's probably one of the most memorable shows we've ever played. So, and Mike happened to be there, and Mike is a better storyteller than I am. So, Mike, you walk us through the evening.
Yeah, it was the most bizarre evening of my entire life. I'll never forget the night. So basically what happened was we leading up to that evening, that Wednesday evening, we were all supposed to, all the Champagne Boys were going to go to Rochester on the Saturday. So this past Saturday for our friend Brody's diaper party. And me and Shane had been at work, and, on the Monday we were talking about it, and I was already like, I don't know, like things were getting really serious, like to the point where, we were all kind of getting ready to shut it down. And Shane was still kind of like, yeah, but we'll see. And then, the news was changing so fast. And by Tuesday, we're like, I don't know, whatever. So even that was kind of in the air. So by the time I came home Wednesday night, Max, you'd reached out and you'd be like, hey, I have this I'm playing this gala, this Nick Nurse gala for his foundation. And there's a spot if you want to come. And I was like, oh man, I'm like, this is pretty cool and unique, but I'm already not going to go to Rochester. I'm like, should I go out tonight? I'm like, I'm like, it's such a unique opportunity. It's only like, I don't know, it was like less than 100 people in the room. It was this sort of like really cool sort of like charity thing. So I'm like, I got to see this thing. It's going to be Nick Nurse playing with the Arkells. I got to go, but it's going to be kind of my last thing.
Right. And at the time, like, the state of the world wasn't, like, there was no lockdown, nothing crazy really had happened yet in North America, right?
No, if anything, it was still very, very much like there was like my brother and Dan were getting together at like a bar, and we were talking about maybe going to meet up with them after to have like a pint. Like everything, like the government warning, everything was still very low risk. It was just like, oh yeah, people are still going about their lives. They're playing NBA games, you know. So we go see Maxey, see everybody. Like people are there. The Raptors are there. They're taking photos. There's like press. They're doing all that stuff. Nick has like a piano guy in the corner doing his thing, and then everybody ends up. I see Maxey. You were there. Like, what were you thinking of the whole thing at that point?
Oh, it was a night that we've been looking forward to for probably a month and a half since Nick asked us to do it. So Nick is launching the Nick Nurse Foundation, and this was the night to kick it all off. It was a hand-to-hand invite. Tables were very expensive. All of Toronto's sort of big rollers are going to be there donating money to this really good cause, which is to help underserved children and youth in music, sport, and literacy. And Nick asked if we'd play Purple Rain with them. So a couple weeks before, the Raptors went on their West Coast swing. We had a rehearsal, and Nick came, and we went through a couple Motown songs that he was going to play with us. And over the last couple weeks, we've been in touch. The whole band's been in touch with Nick, and we've been sending him sort of like piano guitar tutorials via text message, and he's been practicing every single day. And kind of the big finale of the night was going to be Purple Rain. And so this is something we were really looking forward to. We heard that Daniel Caesar was going to join for a couple songs, and I'm a huge fan of Daniel Caesar, so that was exciting. And then we also heard that a bunch of the Raptors were going to be there. And so we were just thinking, oh, this is going to be like a night to remember. We're going to rub shoulders with our favorite players, one of our favorite musicians, and Nick Nurse is going to be there to join us on stage in this like very sort of like elite room. And the fact that we can be a part of it is so exciting. Mike D, our guitarist, he made these custom shop T-shirts that say like Nick Nurse and Arkells on them that all the attendees were going to get. And it was just an event that like we had sort of poured a lot of work into, and so did Nick and his team, and you know, everybody at MLSC that was involved. So it was just something that like I was very, very excited to be a part of, and my dad was going to come, and Mike, you were going to be there. So it just had the makings of an incredible night, and it was just so surreal because, as Mike will explain, the first thing that hits is the Tom Hanks news. And just for context, most people at this event were finding this out on their phone on Twitter. We had about 4 or 5 televisions in our dressing room, kind of next to the ballroom where where the band was all hanging out. And so we're just kind of like watching CP24 for the next hour and a half as all this news begins to unload. And we don't quite know what to make of it. So Mike, I'll let you take it back here.
Yeah, the room was interesting. It was like the Tom Hanks news breaks, and then we're all in like our pod group chat, so we're talking about that. And then it's like, you get like this weird feeling. Like it's like a vibe. It's like, oh man, it's like he's like America's dad. He's like the most famous guy that, like it's like, I immediately said this will actually humanize the virus a lot. I think it will make people pay attention. And so like it had kind of like this feeling where you go, okay, that's interesting. But still you're kind of like, okay, it still feels just so far away and distant. And then, it's like, there's like a murmur at our table where we're having dinner, and they're like, oh, Trump's canceled flights or whatever, his altered flights. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess he's addressing the nation tonight. And then there's kind of like this like text chatter about how like the refs ran, or an official ran out onto the court for the OKC Utah game, and he stopped before tip off. And we're like, oh, that's weird. And we're kind of watching. It's a lot of basketball people in this room anyway. And so, like people are looking at their phones, and then it's like, oh, somebody tested positive for COVID-19. People are like, oh shit, right? And that, during all of this, Matt Devlin's up there being a pro. He's he's getting excited. Max, you were at one point doing like a fun bit with Devlin, like sort of talking about your relationship with Nick Nurse, which I thought was great. And it's funny when I think back to such.
Oh yeah, Mike, what do you think of my speech? I thought it was pretty good. Right?
It was great.
I thought I held the room pretty good.
I filmed some of it, and it's funny when I think back to that time. It just seems so much more innocent now. And then all of a sudden, it goes, oh, it was a Utah player who tested positive. People in the room obviously know. So for those of you that don't know, the Raptors had played the Utah Jazz on the Monday night. This was a Wednesday night. This was 2 nights later, and we're going, oh my God, it was a Jazz player. Then it comes out, it's Rudy Gobert. Everyone's going, oh my goodness, like, he played 30 minutes in that game, got in a tussle with OG. Like this now, this world news that's blowing up our phones, is now in the room. It's directly touched our room, So you're going, oh my goodness, like, what the hell? And honestly, for me, I'm like, oh my, like I did not, like I wasn't even like I was on the fence about coming here, and now I'm in the room, and I'm like, oh my God, and all that stuff, and going through all of those emotions that I think most people have that are very human emotions. I was concerned. You think about your family, all that stuff. Like there's a lot of people that were sort of in that room that were all saying hi. People were bumping elbows and kind of being very cautious, but you're having conversations and stuff. Yeah. So then, yeah, the vibe in the room was kind of different, and Marc Gasol and Freddie were in the room as well. So then, yeah, and then you guys were playing, and I just was so kind of like, I don't know, I had like a weird feeling, and I guess we'll get to your vibe, Max, for playing, but like I just had to sort of like get out of there and get back to my family. Like I was just kind of shook. So I left like right before like your first chorus, to be completely honest. I don't know if you knew that. We haven't really talked since then.
How dare you, Mike? You fucking coward. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm joking. Of course, I'm kidding. Yeah, it was funny because basically, like, I want to say like 5 to 10 minutes before we went on, I think the news that the NBA season had been postponed. But we didn't know how to process it. Obviously, we just heard about Rudy just before that, Rudy Gobert on the Jazz. And so we kind of all go on stage going, well, I guess we're doing it. And then it was going to be a short set anyway. I think it was planned to be like 25 minutes basically all in all. So it wasn't like we were going to be up there for an hour and a half rocking. But I can tell you, everything went great. Nick played incredibly. The people that were there stayed and danced and had a good time. But on stage, it was definitely like, not in the back of my mind, definitely like on my mind directly, that this is a very strange time. And I can imagine as soon as we get off stage, this whole party is going to end. And so after we played the last song, Science is Delivered, Nick was on guitar, and Nick and I just talk on the stage. And he said, oh, did you hear the news? I was like, yeah, I think I did. He's like, yeah, season's postponed. How about that? And I was like, yeah, like we were both kind of exasperated and like, kind of didn't know what to make of the situation. We all kind of had the same mind of let's just get through this together and everybody can go home. And I was texting Dan and Greg, and I was like, what are you guys doing now? And they both work at MLSE, and both their jobs are somewhat affected by this. Greg works for TFC and Dan works for the Leafs, and they both were like, I think we're just going to go home. So Ash and I dropped off our stuff at the office and just went and got a quick bite to eat and just like went back to her place and just sort of like read the internet for the next couple hours before we went to bed. But it was definitely one of those things where it's like this night was going to be remembered for a bunch of reasons going into it, and those reasons dramatically changed by the end of it. But yeah, to be in a room where it was all happening in real time and to be directly kind of connected to some of the players, I say that figuratively speaking, some of the players involved was just, a very strange little piece of history.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And like there's a lot we still don't know. And I was freaked. Like I came home, the baby was sleeping. I kept my distance from Danica, and I was like, she obviously was following along. I was talking to her the whole time, like as this news was breaking, and like you're concerned. Like obviously you're concerned. So I came home, and I left. Like I went, and I was just until we could sort of sort things out. I separated myself from the family, and I kind of was like, hey, like I came in, I made a quick bag. And I hotwired like a hotel, and I'm like, I'm just going to hang out here for a couple days. We knew that, the wraps were going to get tested because that was like reported by Shams, I think, that they were all getting tested essentially at night. So I was like, I just need to like talk to a health professional and figure out what the next steps are. And I didn't really know what else to do. So that's what I did. And I'm sure it's not, in retrospect, I didn't know if a hotel or what, but I was like, I just need to do something. And then, from there, the family could, like Danica and Winona could go to her dad's or, her somewhere, something like that. And then I would come back to the apartment. Anyway, that was like a long couple days. I just grabbed I ended up finally getting a hold of like Canada Health. And this was fascinating because the nurse talked to me and I was like, hey, here's my situation. And I was like, we're still waiting for like the test results, but the preliminary ones are negative or something like that. And she was like, well, she's like, you're fine. She's like, and this is kind of crazy because now I've since like kind of went back and looked, but she was like, if they aren't showing symptoms and there's 2 points of contact, meaning say it was like Rudy had contact with Serge and Serge was in a room that I was in and I didn't talk to Serge, but it's like, she's like, you're fine. And if Serge wasn't symptomatic and Serge tested negative, she's like, then you're fine. You can go home to your family. I'm like, oh, okay. So like all the wraps sort of are preliminary testing negatively. So I'm like, if they're preliminary testing negatively, they didn't have symptoms, then it's like, it should be good. So then, yeah, I came home and yeah, I've been home ever since with the fam. Like I have not, like I hung out there and now I'm back and it's like, we are like locked down, man.
Is it scary having kids like during all this? Like how are you guys feeling, Mike and Shane? And I mean, especially with like Alex being pregnant, what's the vibe?
Yeah, that's the part that's a little bit scary, but we are being, we have a nice big house. Like, we're not scared to go outside. We're not in contact with any people. So we're just kind of laying low until we hear that it's safe to go out, kind of like what Max said. But yeah, I'm definitely less worried about my daughter getting it than I am my wife, just because my wife can't take any medication right now, because if she does, it could harm the baby. And then, we might have to make like a crazy decision, on like what to do with the pregnancy. Like my wife could have to go into labor early or just terminate the pregnancy depending on what happens to my wife and how she's affected if she, heaven forbid, if she got COVID-19. So yeah, that's very scary.
So
but
can you explain to me and our listeners, your wife has lupus. Alex has lupus, but
yeah,
like
it's basically
COVID
she's
affects...
immunocompromised, so she's deficient. She doesn't have all the immunities that a healthy person would have. So when they say like the elderly, they're very at risk. They're also talking about immunocompromised people. So Alex is just as dangerous as maybe somebody in their 80s, right? So it is scary to be around people who have been reckless, but we haven't been around those people, and we're only around other people who have been self-isolated, like Alex's parents canceled the trip to Florida, and they've been extremely overly cautious with everything. So we're fine to even go hang out with them and have dinner with them, etc.
Mike, how are you feeling being a new dad with Winnie and Danica right now?
Yeah, like I mean, here's the thing. It's like you read everything you can read and there's conflicting information all the time. They're learning new things. But essentially, like, it seems like we talked about in the pod that feels like years ago now, it seems like young kids do well with it. You know what I mean? That they sort of get it and it just passes through them and they don't really, doesn't affect them, I guess, in sort of, commonly. So in that sense, you go, okay, well, that's a good thing. But still, you're like, what if it's in our apartment? You know what I mean? Like you have those feelings and you go, how do you hunker down and you just sort of, get through it, but you always have these worst case scenarios in the back of your mind. And, like Danica, myself, and Wynn, we're all healthy. We don't have the concerns that obviously Shane and Alex have to live with because of Alex's condition. But no one ever thinks of the best case scenario when something like this happens. You know what I mean? You just think of you read the worst ones. Yeah. So that's that's the real feeling that you have as you go what if we are one of these people that are going to sort of it could be in any of us for these next 14 days or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. How do you guys feel? Erica, are you concerned about it?
I mean, personally concerned about contracting the virus and like dying because of the virus. Not really, but I mean, just not knowing like how everything's going to go. I'm more worried about, like my parents and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just freaky times.
Hey, I was just thinking about like this idea of how we get the word out for people to behave well, and of course you've seen like this news footage of college kids partying like this weekend in New Orleans, or it's just like insanity. I know even like at Queen's University, it was like St. Patty's Day weekend this year, and it did not stop seemingly many of the Queen's kids from going out. But also in our own group of friends, we had some friends get together on Saturday, and this was much discussed in the Champagne Boys group, whether like we should have done that or not. And it was interesting to me because I haven't talked to Shane about this yet. Because Shane, you were one of the more vocal people about saying like we really need to stay in, and I know you guys are all kind, caring people, but the fact you didn't stay in is something that's troubling to me, which is, I think, a totally valid thing to say. Also, Alex, Al Jerkovic, my old roommate, and who's also a new dad, he used to be called Simple Al, but now he's called Woke Al because I think especially since he partnered up with the lovely Sarah Bobus and has had a daughter of his own. He's very, very well informed, and there's no plastics in the house, and I think he's a vegetarian. Like he used to be the guy who'd have like a smoker in the backyard, and he'd be like cooking up meat every night, and now he's a vegetarian. And I think he's made some changes in his life that we can all agree are probably really, really good for himself and his family and the environment. But I was just thinking about you two guys in particular because both Shane and Al, I think before they had this transformation into fatherhood and having a family, were probably two of the lesser informed people when it came to our group of friends, and probably didn't have that many opinions when it came to like, social politics or any of that stuff. Would you say that's generally true, Shane?
Well, I think it's true for everyone. You're going to react in line with how much skin you have in the game. And when I heard that this could affect my wife and my wife's life, I kind of took it seriously. So for me to comment in the Champagne Boys group a little bit more seriously, I think it woke them up a little bit. And I did receive some messages of apology from certain members of the Champagne Boys, which I appreciated.
Cool. Yeah. And for the record, Mike wasn't there. I wasn't there. Shane wasn't there. We were good boys. Erica wasn't there. For the record. So, my question.
No, but even like anywhere for 3 weeks.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not angry at any of the people who were there either, because I know that everyone comes to the realization I feel like we're all at now, especially after we just saw the Prime Minister speak, and everyone gets to there at their own pace. And like last Wednesday, I was ready to party it up in Rochester. I told Alex, there's nothing that's going to stop me. We're going. It's not going to be a big deal. And by Wednesday night, I changed my tune real quick because
So my question, though,
what unfolded
because I was thinking about you and Al specifically because you have like such like experience in both regards. So like in both fatherhood, family, and then also just being like a guy who kind of doesn't give a shit about like this kind of thing, typically, like when it comes to like greater societal like issues, whether it's like the environment and stuff like that. And by the way, I'm not saying like I'm no saint either. So, but I was thinking, I was like, you guys would actually be both really good at educating people who don't give a shit. Because like, when like former alcoholics go like, hey, I was once like you and I didn't think that the drink meant much, but if you get carried away, then you could turn out to be an alcoholic, and look at me, and I'm telling you now because I was once like you. So I was just trying to think like, what do you think are the best ways to get people to change their behavior when they don't give a shit? Because I think no one is more equipped than you and Al to give that message.
Well, just simply growing up, like once you get older, and no one who's 25 is going to act the same way when they're 35. Having kids is a really good lesson in responsibility and maturity.
No, but I'm saying you can't ask them to grow. I'm saying like things need to happen right now, and there needs to be like really good leadership and messaging to get stupid fucking college kids who are going out for St. Patrick's Day to buck up and do the right thing. So like, what do you think is the most effective?
Nothing's going to stop these kids.
Nothing.
These kids are driven by just like getting tail or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's all that's on their minds. And until one of their friends get it, they're really not going to do anything, because they don't know, they don't even know how to think or what to think. They're just doing what their cool friends are doing because they want to be at that party where they might make out with that girl they like. And nothing's more powerful than that until they find out after making out with that girl they contracted COVID, and then all their friends will wise up. But until then, I don't think some speech from some old dude who has a kid is going to do anything.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. Okay, I thought you'd have some sage wisdom. You know what? You should do like some sort of like YouTube tutorial, and you could show like old photos of you and old crazy things you used to do, and you'd be like, "Listen, kids, I was just like you. But trust me." And then,
I could show footage from a diaper party I was at like 6 months ago. Like it's honestly just because I have so much to lose right now that I seem like I'm a bit on my high horse. It's just because, if Alex contracts this, my life could be destroyed. And that's a huge motivator in terms of chiming in to your friends when you see them all over social media having a laugh and drinking. Like it felt insulting, but I still wasn't upset with them because I would have been them if I didn't have a child and if my wife wasn't immunocompromised. Easily, I would have been them.
Hey, so to switch gears for a second here, how do you guys feel that the Canadian government has handled this so far? Are you guys proud of Justin Trudeau? Do you think we're behind the ball? Is there anything that sort of stands out to you?
Well, I think he has a distinct advantage with having a couple of countries having already gone through this. So like Italy was where we were 3 weeks ago. So he's had a pretty good roadmap on what to do. And I think we are a little bit ahead for that reason. And I like the way he spoke. I did notice he put a little bit of a cooler emphasis on his English parts than his French parts. Did you notice that? He was way cooler in his English delivery than his French.
I don't know what cool French sounds like.
Sorry, but I mean the pausing in which he used for English was so cool at certain points when he's like, and if you're away, it's time to come home. Like he did that part so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did look right into the camera and he said like, yeah, for Canadians abroad, you need to come home now.
It's interesting because like, I think he's handling it well. I think the country's doing, I will say I feel a sense of comfort in the way that our country is handling things. Like it's giving me sort of a sense of calm as a citizen, where there's like a lot of not a lot of known things right now. I feel like he is providing that, which is what you want out of a leader. And it touches him personally. His wife contracted the virus like that. It's like he's not just a guy out there like, talking about something abstract that's happening to other people. Like it's right there in his home. So yeah.
Not only that, he probably has the virus.
Yeah.
Like we're literally listening to a guy who has an 80% chance of having COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he hasn't been tested.
No, because they think it's pointless to test him because he probably has it and he's not exhibiting any symptoms yet. So it's like if he does, they know he has it. And if he doesn't, somehow he avoided it.
Speaking of that, do you guys think so when you see like Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, who obviously got it as well, if you've been reading the reports, they'll be doing these videos. Donovan Mitchell actually just did an interview today with, I think, Good Morning America, something like that. And, he's obviously in isolation, but he said he's feeling good. News broke, a couple hours before we did this pod that Idris Elba tested positive for COVID. And it's like Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson have been doing sort of sending positive messages. Do you think that those videos help humanize the virus in a way that like, a lot of people are going to get this. Some people might be stigmatized, but it helps destigmatize it? Or do you think it emboldens people to think like, yo, Donovan Mitchell looks fine. I don't care if I get it.
Well, he said he could play a Game 7 in the finals right now. He's like, I'm ready. To me, that is terrifying. And when you hear something like that, and I just saw that video today, all I think about is the guys partying on Saturday night and which one of them may have had it. You know what I mean? Because when you have it and you're relatively healthy, you don't feel like you have it. And from what I've learned in doing my research and speaking to certain experts, that you can contract it before you have symptoms of it. So that's to me, that I found that more terrifying than had he been like, this is terrible. And I really feel it.
Yeah, there's a paper out now that essentially says that they're discovering that when you're asymptomatic, you are absolutely still you can spread it. But yeah, anyway, the public health nurse didn't seem to, that wasn't the information they were going off of.
Of
And
course,
it's
it's updating daily. Yeah, and I was even I was actually talking to the woman who wrote the guidelines for pregnant women on COVID and how to behave. And she was saying she can't even confidently say that children aren't going to be safe from this, are going to be safe rather. She said there's not enough statistical data out yet.
Yeah, I actually found it comforting, and I thought it was the best way for information to get out that this was serious. Because if it was just a bunch of nobodies that got COVID-19 at first, and you didn't know the person, you'd be like, I probably won't get it. But when Tom Hanks got it, I said, okay, this is serious. When the prime minister's wife gets it, you go, oh my God, if they're getting the rich and famous, then they could get anybody. I think that's one of these things that really brings people together. And it also made me think of like, that's actually a brilliant tactic for the next time something like this happens. Like some rich and famous people got to take one for the team and just say like, okay, I got it. Because like I was thinking about like HIV and AIDS. I think that awareness and money raised probably was expanded tenfold when Magic Johnson got it. And of course, it was a terrible thing that Magic Johnson got HIV. But like the awareness and the humanity that all of America had to feel for anybody with HIV because Magic had it was something that ultimately was probably good in a weird way. And so I do think that like Tom Hanks and Sophie Trudeau and a professional basketballer getting it made everybody really have to like think about how easy it is for the thing to spread.
Well, it got everybody off the tip of this is for poor, disadvantaged people who aren't taking precautions.
Totally. And also it made it feel like it wasn't this thing that was just happening over there in China. Because I remember a few weeks ago, I was like, oh, that's just this Chinese thing. There's always stuff going on over in Asia that doesn't really relate to my life in any level. So I just didn't think that it would ever affect me. But here we are. I had a question, though. Like, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is just America's response to it and just like how terrible Trump has done with all this. And we've always observed through the Trump presidency that like really nothing has gone wrong on a sort of a natural disaster level. And so he's able to skate by for the last 3.5 years, seemingly without a care in the world and seemingly doing an okay job because there hasn't been anything for him really to reckon with. And this is obviously a huge test for any administration. And he's failing so badly at it. And it almost makes me feel like this is like a Mother Nature market correction, where it's like, if we have rewarded people who are just like so baldly selfish and have so little interest in the job of leadership, and in obviously his position, he's like the leader of the free world. Like something has to correct that. And just seeing him to be exposed for just sort of the narcissist, lazy person that he is, to me has been actually really satisfying. And I wonder if there's going to be a paradigm shift. I wonder if all the people that support him and think that he knows what's best, if that's going to change on any level. Because I think in the next couple of weeks, when countries like Canada and Mexico and everywhere else are not allowing people to go into America and vice versa, they're not taking any Americans because the Americans are so behind the curve. It's going to be no one's fault but the people in charge, and that's Donald Trump. And you just see so many examples of people coming forward and saying, I had a job in the government that literally looked after this very thing. When Obama was in charge, I was in charge of disease outbreak, and we went to Africa to take on Ebola in 2014. And because of our efforts, it never got out of Africa, and we were able to help a lot of Africans as well. Now that position has been vacant for the last 3 years, and there's tons more examples like that in the federal government in America. And for someone like myself, who is very in favor of an active government, an active big government, when you put people who are really smart and really caring in charge of really important things, to see the United States sort of crumble in that way, I think is a real wake-up call for everybody. And I think it's hopefully a good reminder that we should rely on these public institutions.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I mean, Yeah, Obama had put that sort of that task force in place to respond to pandemics and things like that, and that was gutted. That was one of the moves that Trump had made, and it's clearly come back to hurt them. And when you asked about how we feel about Canada's leadership and Justin Trudeau and all of these things, there is a sense of comfort in like okay, here's the plan. You might disagree with the plan a bit, but at least we know we have a plan, and our numbers are still low. They're guaranteed to go up big. Like Shane said, Italy was where we are now 3 weeks ago. So we're going to see where things end up in 3 weeks. But I do know that I feel better about him instituting all of these things because it should flatten the curve. And people have talked about this. I'm sure you've read about it ad nauseum. Yeah, and that feels good. And, when we watch the news in the States or, we all follow a lot of American people on Twitter, you're just like, man, they got to be terrified, I don't know, their healthcare is already a bit of an issue. And it's I don't know. I just feel like there's an infrastructure here where it's like, okay, yeah, there's going to be a huge lineup to get tests. They're going to have criteria to get tests and all that stuff. But at least you can find that stuff. It feels like down there, it's like all over the place. Some states are different than other states. And yeah, I don't know what's going to happen down there. But it makes me feel good about being up here.
Another thing I'd say is Michael Lewis, my favorite author, I've talked about him on the podcast before, he wrote a book literally about this situation 3 years ago, where basically the whole book it's called The Fifth Risk, and it's about what happens when governments are gutted. And he specifically talks about the Trump administration not hiring people in very important departments. So he'd go visit these various floors at the Department of Energy, which is responsible for transporting nuclear waste around. And all these desks that used to be occupied by really hardworking government officials just were completely empty because he let go all that staff when he took over and never bothered to rehire anybody. And basically, the fifth risk is the unknown, and that's the premise of the book. And what happens when something unknown happens? How are we going to deal with it? And this is exactly what he's talking about. This was something that wasn't easily predicted, and sure enough, we have Jared Kushner looking for advice. Did you read this article? He asked his father-in-law, his brother's father-in-law, who's Carly Kloss, the model's her father, who's a doctor, asked if he had any advice on how to deal with coronavirus. So literally this guy goes on a Facebook message forum for other doctors and says I have a direct line to the White House, to the Oval Office. Does anybody have any thoughts or suggestions on how to deal with this coronavirus? And that is a real thing that happened. That is how Donald Trump has been dealing with this. It's just asking for his buddy's advice. And by the way, it's we all get through life a lot, in this particular way where you go, oh, hey, what bar should we go to tonight? Or anybody have any hotel suggestions? Can you ask your friend who went to Cancun what hotel we should stay at? That's the way most people get through their day to day. But when it comes to serious shit that requires really smart people paying very close attention, we are left with Donald Trump's son-in-law asking his brother's father-in-law. So anyway, it just, yeah, it truly exposes Trump for the fraud that he is.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess we're at about an hour, guys. Do you want to sort of wrap it? What do you think?
Yeah, so I was going to suggest we should end on a lighter note. I was going to ask what television, movies, podcasts you guys recommend, because I think that would be a fun thing, because a lot of people have time on their hands, and we should give some suggestions. Shane, let's start with you.
Oh, what was it? What did I watch the other day? It was a Mark Wahlberg movie with Post Malone, and it's just the stupidest action movie, but it's kind of enjoyable because it's unintentionally funny, and it's sometimes intentionally funny. It's called Spencer something. If you search Spencer, Spenser, you'll see a picture of Post Malone's face on the Netflix poster. Give that one a try. That one I found a really good time waster.
Mikey?
I haven't really been. It's funny. It's kind of like we hang with Wynn during the day. You just got to kind of occupy the times that she is awake, and then when she goes to sleep, we sort of chat. We catch up, and then maybe look at our phones, and then it's kind of like bedtime. I'll throw on Trek, but I will say my brother recommended. I think it's called Devs. Or maybe Dev, and it's by the dude that did Ex Machina, Alex Garland. And apparently it's awesome. So that's my brother's recommendation that I'll recommend to the pod because I haven't gone around to watching it.
Is that
but it
on
is the
Netflix?
list. I think so. I gotta see, but that's probably what I'm going to start tonight after.
How do you spell that?
What's that?
How do you spell it?
You know what? I'll look right at Greg's text. Yeah, DEVS, and it's on FX on Hulu, but it's probably on Prime here or Crave. Maybe Crave has it. I should know that since Mike Not Much in Conversation was already on there. Max, what are you watching?
Paul Moncrief, our buddy, he recommended the show Hunters, which is the new show on Amazon Prime with Al Pacino. And it's really good. It takes place in the 70s, but it's about Nazis. And there's these Nazi hunters in America that are trying to track down all the people that came from Germany after World War II. And it's really stylish. The performances are really good. It kind of gets a little zany. There's these sort of weird montage scenes that get kind of arty, but in a really fun way. We've been really enjoying that a lot. I'd recommend that. And also, of course, if you're interested in podcasts, The Daily's been really good. Bill Simmons and Malcolm Gladwell have a great episode from last week after the news of the NBA hit. And if you're looking for something a little bit lighter, Conan O'Brien is very good. Erica, what about you?
I'm late to the game, but I started watching The Morning Show. Really good.
On Apple.
Also,
yeah.
I watched this movie for the first time on the weekend. It's with Jim Carrey, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh man, that's a classic.
I recommend that to everyone.
I'll second that.
This is great, Erica. That's adorable. That's great. Good recommendation. It's only one of the most critically acclaimed movies of our youth.
Oh, really?
So I'm glad
that just
on board.
That just reminded me of something actually. I can kind of settle a debate. Obviously, I want to settle it because it's in my favor. But when we were talking about the Paul McCartney versus Michael Jordan thing.
Yeah.
Okay, because just Erica reminded me of young people. That was definitely with young people. Michael Jordan is more famous than Paul McCartney. And the reason is Alex did a test with her class because Alex has a David Bowie book. And no one knew who David Bowie was in her class because they're asking who was on the cover of it. And then she asked who knew the Beatles. And a lot of the kids in her class knew who the Beatles were, but not all of them could name. In fact, I think she said only one person could name all of the Beatles. And none of them said they would know what's his name? Paul McCartney looked like in person if he was at a party. But all of them knew Michael Jordan.
Interesting.
So maybe, but you think with 30 and up, maybe he's more famous to people, Paul McCartney. But definitely with the younger generation, which is a big part of the population, I think Michael Jordan would overwhelmingly win if we're talking about who's more famous.
There you have it. Guys, do we have any message that we want to leave the people? Maybe they have some anxiety, maybe they don't. Maybe they're feeling hopeful about the future, maybe they're
Just
nervous.
Stay inside. Just do it. Don't go outside. Don't do anything.
All of those things I think are very smart. We got to chill out. We got to be good to each other. And it's funny. I was thinking about any other times in our life when something big and international has happened, it's usually a terrorist attack. And the thing we're always told is don't let the terrorists win. You got to keep living your life. Go out to the public squares. Go to the bars. Go to the baseball game. Don't let them win. And so my
it's the opposite of that.
Is to do exactly that. But in this case, that's literally the opposite thing that you should be doing. Sorry, let me say it again. But in this case, it's literally the worst thing you could be doing. You should be doing the opposite, and that is literally just staying inside and being quiet, basically.
100%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Same time tomorrow, guys?
Yeah. Erica, good job. Now we're talking.
All right. Stay safe and healthy, guys, and everybody listening.